invisible, ignored, taken for granted. These are terms nobody would wish to associate themselves with. But unfortunately, we have made migrants who contribute to the effective functioning of our city feel like second-rate citizens.
It took a pandemic for us to recognize them and the harsh impact COVID has had on them. Human Welfare Charitable Trust has embarked on a journey to improve the lives of the disadvantaged migrants through its center in Naigaon. But now the key question was how to do so.
And this is where qualitative research came into play. While men work hard to make ends meet, there is scope for the women to step up and contribute as they are away from their village and have fewer responsibilities. However, the deep-rooted conditioning of gender roles makes them feel disempowered. Through our findings, we have identified skilling as the unlock to break the barrier as it has a domino effect. It will bring in work, money, and will eventually lead to a positive impact on their life.
We believe that our approach, which is akin to a model, can be scaled up to other migrant hubs, as empowering the women can empower the community, and this can bring a real change in making the migrants be heard.
Hello, everyone. Today is our last interview. We have today with us Aprayita and Sachi. They are the winners of RGT 2022 in India, and they have done a great project which is called Shelter of Love, a safe space for the migrant community of Naigaon. So, welcome here, Aprayita and Sachi. The floor is yours. Introduce yourself and also explain us a little bit how did you came up with this idea?
So, basically, we started this entire process by reading up online, researching about the kind of NGOs which are there. And after this entire process, we narrowed down upon a theme, which we wanted to pursue, and the NGOs which worked with this. And we met with a few NGOs, their founders, but our meeting with Mr. Kalpesh Kabra, who is the founder of Human Welfare Charitable Trust, that went really well because, we went down to his center in Naigaon and he helped us understand the objective and the challenge of the NGO, which was to design a new center in Naigaon. And he wanted to develop and design the offerings that he would run at the center. And he was also quite keen and confident about the fact that market research would really help him address the objective. And that's how we kind of ended up finalizing upon the issue and the theme and also the NGO that we wanted to work with.
And girls, why would you say that migration is such an overwhelming issue in the reality of India?
Yeah, so in India, actually, a large percentage of the population actually lives in rural geographies where there is actually a lack of access to infrastructure, facilities, education, and work opportunities, which is why India actually sees a lot of movement from these rural places to bigger cities in search of better job opportunities and just an improved livelihood in general. And so essentially, migration is because of the adverse conditions of poverty and unemployment and the need to really get away from that environment.
Yeah, so just as you have said, although it provides migrants a way out of these distressed conditions of the rural society, and they dream of an improved life, once they move, they migrate. Their dream is not completely fulfilled, right? Because as you have said in your project, adjectives like invisible, ignored, and taken for granted are terms that nobody really wants to be associated with. But at the same time, these migrants are usually associated with. How can you explain this effect?
Yeah, yeah. So, like Sachi also said, there's a lot of internal migration taking place to larger cities, but the high cost of living, in a city that kind of forces one to live away from the main city. That basically means that, they are living away from the infrastructure, the facilities, the amenities, and more often than not, the kind of jobs that they end up taking, they end up working as a construction worker, as an electrician, as a driver. So these are not really considered to be respectable occupation, respectable jobs, and are often considered to be taken for granted. And these are low paying, of course. So despite the fact that they've moved away from the comfort of their homes to bigger cities in search of a better livelihood to accomplish their dreams, the class and the income difference kind of continues to exist. And as a result of that, that's the reason why we have commented on the fact that their dream is not entirely fulfilled despite moving to a bigger city.
And what have you found to be the biggest barriers for migrants to be treated equally to local citizens?
So very similar to Aprajita's answer, The key barrier which we actually identified is the fact that migrants don't have access to the same opportunities, to the same facilities as the local citizens. So while there is migration taking place, people are moving from rural geographies to bigger cities. The bigger cities are not entirely equipped for this inflow of population. So despite kind of being in a bigger city, they don't have, and being exposed to things, they don't have access to those things. And therefore, there is overt as well as covert discrimination, which really takes place against the migrants because the local citizens really look at them as being in a subservient position. So the entire sentiment is that, migrants are not as educated as me. They come from small places. They don't speak the same language as me. They are in low paying jobs, blue collar jobs. So overall, there is this whole sense of them being different from the local citizens.
And on top of that, would you say that there is also a gender composition in here affecting them at the same time?
Yes, so there is a gender composition here as well. And actually, before we, even designed the methodology of this research, the key question which actually occurred to both of us is that who do we talk to? Do we talk to the men, the women? Should we talk to both of them? And basis a lot of secondary research and a lot of work which we do anyway, post COVID, we have understood that life has not really been easy for the migrants and for people who are in the lower economic strata, and a single earning member is not enough for survival, especially given the layoffs, the salary cuts. And what is actually unique about Naigaon is the fact that along with the men coming to Naigaon, even their wives have joined them, even their children have joined them. So in many cases, it's just the men who come and migrate to bigger cities. But when it comes to Naigaon, the entire family has come. And since the women are away from their extended family, away from the societal gaze in the village, there is scope for the women to actually step up and contribute to the family income, which is why we actually realized and we decided to make women the focus of our research.
And because also I've read the project you have done, which I really liked it, and you have proved that, for example, early marriage compromises is also a factor, right, that affect these women, these girls that actually join the male of the family. So how can we stop a domino effect that I don't know how to explain it in English, but yeah, we usually, as you have explained, usually this early marriage, also the lack of positive influence, it leads to a domino effect, right?
Yeah.
So it goes generation after generation, and it's really hard to stop it. How can we help with this?
Yeah. I mean, like you said, Paula, it's very hard to stop it because when we talk about compromises, in and post marriage, that's like a result of years of social conditioning. And unfortunately, that's like a part and parcel of their life, of an Indian woman's life. And when we talk about Indian women, she's always been taught to adjust, to compromise, and the fact that she has to act as a family binder. And this entire sentiment is much stronger when we go to smaller towns and especially in rural areas. So obviously changing that thought process is very difficult. But of course there are different ways, there are other ways through which some gradual change can be definitely, can definitely be brought to their thinking. So, and one of them is definitely educating the girl child. And in the last 5 6 years we're also seeing like like much greater emphasis on educating the girl child, and because that has a clear impact on increasing the marriageable age of the girl. So that is one option, and the second one is about creating a positive influence through a skilling program. And that is actually one of the key component of our recommendation to the NGO, because the NGO can create role models in the society, and that can actually go a long way in pushing and inspiring the women to join the skilling program and ultimately change their lifestyle.
Yeah, I completely see that point because it is a really difficult problem, and the domino effect is the worst that can happen. And of course, like, it's a great job, the one that the NGO is doing, and we would like to know a little bit more about the methodology that you have done to approach this huge issue. Do you want to
Yeah.
explain us a little bit more about that?
Yes. So, I mean, given the developmental nature of our study, we approach it from a macro lens to understand the community, but at the same time, we also approach it from a micro lens to understand the people. So, we started the entire study with a community tour to get a macro perspective of Naigaon, how the people are, what sort of infrastructure is there. And we also spoke to experts across different fields, such as health, education, governance, and also self help groups. And obviously, we interacted with the beneficiaries to understand how their life is, the kind of challenges that they face, and what are their needs from an NGO in Naigaon. So that was really the approach that we adopted towards the study.
And would you say that COVID-19 has helped identifying this issue?
Yeah, so when COVID hit, when the pandemic hit in 2020, it really triggered a lot of reverse migration. So, the migrants were actually moving back to their hometowns, moving back to their villages. Because out of all the populations in India, it was actually the migrants who were left to be the most vulnerable communities. I mean, they completely lost their livelihood, they lost their jobs, so that's why they started moving back to their hometowns. And this actually had an impact on the country as a whole because the migrants form the backbone of our country. I mean, look at the kind of jobs they do, drivers, construction workers, electricians. We can't really do without them. So, fortunately, unfortunately, it was because of COVID that people actually took notice and recognized the contribution of the migrants and how important they are to the efficient functioning of the country.
Yeah. It was even more clear in that situation that we need migrants. They are doing a great job, just like local people do, and of course they should be treated the same way, and not only treated but also perceived on the same way. Um, and also to finish this interview, we would love to know what have been the main challenges that you had to face, because I read in the project that you mentioned that these people usually they are unable to be self-reliant because they have no voice in this issue. So in giving voice to the situation that migrants are living, what were the main challenges that you had to face?
So, Paula, like you said, I mean, these women don't have a voice. So, in some cases, actually, it was a little difficult to get through to these people. They were a little wary about, us coming, us entering their homes, us talking to them. So, because they had less exposure. So, overall, they were a little concerned about that. But we tried to route the conversation through a local contractor. So, we identified a man from the village who kind of took us to their homes, helped bridge that gap between us and the women, and essentially just break the barrier. So that was of course one thing. We also faced a bit of a language barrier in certain cases where the women did not understand or speak Hindi English, the languages which the two of us speak. So in that case, we also requested some Hindi speaking women to help us with translation so that the conversations became easier.
Well, despite all of this, you have done a great job. So thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for this. And it's great that you have done this project. And also in this interview, we want to highlight the fact that it's super important to consider these migrants heroes, as they have been super brave enough to live their past life, start a new life, and they should be, of course, welcome, treated, and also perceived in the same way as local people everywhere,
Absolutely.
all
Yeah.
around the world. So
Yeah.
thank you so much, both of you, again for the project and for this interview. And it has been a pleasure to get to know you both.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much,
much,
Paula.
Paula.
It's been a
Thanks a lot.
pleasure. Yes, thank you.